And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I'm going to talk about some spoilers here from Battle for Baldur's Gate. Already made a video sort of about the backgrounds things, and I think I was pretty bummed out in that video about a combination of things. I didn't like some of the things I was already seeing in this set, and I don't really like that they're already coming out with new cards. I mean, even my Kamigawa Neon Dynasty cards I haven't really gotten around to playing with yet. I mean, it's getting to be a bit much, but there is some really interesting commanders here that I think I need to talk about. I will just say I will not be talking, I don't think, about any of the choose a background commanders. And the reason why is because I think they're just going to be really hard to evaluate, right? We don't really know what all the backgrounds are going to look like. And since you can match up any of those legendary creatures with a background, makes it really tough to evaluate them. So I think I'm going to stick with the ones that, I mean, there certainly is enough to talk about here. So I don't think it's going to be an issue talking about the ones that don't have that ability. So let's get into it. Starting out with Glunch the Bestower. 1, a green and a white jellyfish. It's an 0/5 and it has flying. At the beginning of your end step, choose a player. So you can choose any player, including yourself or your opponents. Then put 2+1/+1 counters on a creature they control. Choose a second player to draw a card. Then choose a third player to create 2 treasure. Oh, wow. Okay, so you're going to pick 3 players in total here. And you have no choice in the matter. It has to be 3 players. So that means one person's going to get left out. So you're going to choose 1 player to get counters, 1 player to get a draw, and 1 player to get treasure tokens. So obviously, I mean, you don't have to build around the draw. Drawing is just great always. But if you pick yourself to draw, which you probably do want to, that means you got to give another player treasure tokens, and you got to give another player 2+1/+1 counters. Oh boy, this is very huggy. It would be really difficult to not make this huggy. I mean, Generous Patron is going to be, of course, an auto include in this deck because you put those counters on your opponent's creatures, and then you're going to get to draw another card, assuming you choose yourself to draw a card. I mean, the only issue with this, I mean, I like the versatility of how you get to choose which one you want. But if you choose, say you want the treasure tokens because you need ramp or something, you're going to choose the treasure tokens, which means you have to choose an opponent to draw a card, and you have to choose another opponent to get counters on their creature. This could be a challenging one to build around for sure, I think, because you are giving your opponent, at the very least, you're giving 2 of your opponents good stuff, right? I mean, unless I'm reading this wrong. No, you have to choose 3 players, and if one of them is you, which I imagine one of them is always going to be you, and if you choose the treasure tokens or the counters, you're going to be letting your opponent draw, right? Which is not great. You could obviously do this in a politics way. It's an interesting commander. I think it would be a difficult build around because you're going to want to make it so that it's not so that you're getting an advantage out of, I mean, other than just I play politics with this, like who wants treasure tokens, don't attack me next turn. That's always going to be good. But getting more advantage out of it, like say Viridian Revel. So now I can throw Viridian Revel in this deck and give my opponent the treasure tokens. Or you can throw Magnetic Mine in the deck, and so that no matter who you give the treasure tokens to, they're going to be taking damage off of them. So that's another interesting way to go about it. Yeah, I'm starting to cultivate some ideas here. This might be an interesting one, actually. It's definitely going to be challenging, though. If you want to go the not hug route, it definitely will be challenging because you have to choose those players, right? You have no option there. Moving on. Raphael, Fiendish Savior. 3, black, red. Devil Noble 4/4 has flying. Other demons, devils, imps, and Tieflings you control get +1/+1 and have lifelink. So that's interesting. We have a tribal theme here with some fairly underwhelming tribes, I think. Well, not demons. Demons are definitely not underwhelming. Devils, imps, and tieflings. I don't know. Tieflings. I've always gone back and forth on that one. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature card was put into your graveyard from anywhere this turn, create a 1/1 red devil creature token with this creature die. When this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So That's interesting. So you're creating the devils, which then, of course, will get the boost. They'll get the +1/+1 and lifelink. That's very interesting. And of course, I have a Denic deck, and that is a similar ability where it's, this is at the beginning of each end step rather than it doesn't trigger when it actually happens. A little different. I suppose your opponent could remove your Raphael before the end step and then you wouldn't get the devil token, but essentially it's the same idea. And putting a creature card into your graveyard from anywhere is not that difficult. Obviously in Denic, it's every player, so that's a little bit easier. Here it has to be you. And of course, there's a lot of ways to do it. Discarding is probably your best bet. And I probably would go a discard theme with this. I have a Asmaran discard deck. It's a Rakdos discard deck, and there is tons and tons of support for that in Rakdos colors. Black and red have lots of great discard support. So you really could just go a straight up discard theme with this and just easily be discarding a creature card into your graveyard every single turn. And then getting that 1/1 devil on everyone's turn. And for anyone out there that has a Zerzoth deck, and I used to have a Zerzoth deck, creating all those devils can be really problematic for your opponent because when they die, you get to throw all that damage around. So even a board wipe, like once you get up to like 8 or 10 of them, it's your opponents almost don't want a board wipe because they know they're going to be taking all that damage to the face, right? So that's actually, I really love creatures that have dice triggers so that if someone does board wipe, at least you get something out of it. Very interesting. Like I know people will be very tempted to build around the tribal theme here. And you can do that a little. Just having all those devils and they're all going to get that buff and the lifelink. I really like that a lot. And again, you're in a life gain deck here a little bit too, right? So, which of the mores? Throw that in there. It's not a devil imp or anything like that, but you are going to get that life gain trigger on your turn very easily because all you have to do is swing with one of your devils and they're going to gain you life. So you can even go that route as well. I think this is a very interesting one. Like I said, I would probably just go straight up a discard theme with it to guarantee that you're cranking out those devils every turn. Next up, Merkel, Lord of Bones. And, as I've said before, I played D&D quite a bit. So I know Merkel I'm very familiar with. He's the god of death. I guess it's a little confusing. There's a few guys that sort of are in the death portfolio. Merkel's, I would say, is mostly the god of death. So they are bringing the D&D gods into this one. And they're doing it in a little bit of a different fashion again than they did with the previous, the Theros gods, right? 4 white, black, and a green. So 7 mana, that's expensive. So I'm expecting some powerful abilities here. It's a god, 7/5. As long as your life total is less than or equal to half your starting life total. Merkel, Lord of Bones, has indestructible. So you have to get your life total down to half before it has indestructible. I don't know if I love that. That's tough. I will say, though, Tyrite Sanctum, I'll remind everybody of that card. I really love that card. I put in a lot of decks. It's extra good if your commander is already a god because you can immediately use the second ability to make your commander indestructible all the time. So now I don't have to worry about that half-life thing. So any of the gods coming out in this set, which I imagine there's going to be a few, this is the Tyrite Sanctum. Keep that card in mind. So what are we getting out of this, though? Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that card, except in its it's an enchantment and loses all other card types. Whoa. Okay, so you have a creature die. Let's say it's a Sakura Tribe Elder. You sacrifice your Sakura Tribe Elder to get a land. If you do, you create a token that's a copy of that card, except that it's an enchantment and loses all other card types. So it's not a creature anymore. Right? Oh boy. So if it loses all other card types, that means it's losing its power and toughness, I'm quite certain, right? So if you sacrifice your Sakura Tribe Elder, it's just going to be an enchantment called Sakura Tribe Elder, and it's not going to be a creature because it loses all other card types. Yeah. And you can't have you can only have creatures with power and toughness. So if it's not a creature, its power and toughness will cease to exist. It's just going to be an enchantment sitting on the battlefield that you can sacrifice to go get a land with, right? It's still going to have its ability. They don't lose abilities, they only lose card types. So your Sakura Tribe Elder is going to be an enchantment that costs 1 and a green, and you can sacrifice to go get a basic land and put it into play tapped, right? That's what this is doing. Very interesting. So it is turning. So yeah, all your creatures are going to just become enchantments. The power and toughness is no longer going to apply. Obviously, you can't attack, you can't block, none of that. They're just going to be, and they can't be destroyed by creature removal. All right, a board wipe is going to do nothing. I think you probably would want to put lots of board wipes in this deck, and in Abzan colors, that's not going to be a problem. Lots of removal, obviously. I think lots of like a Sakura Tribe Elder is the perfect example of, I think, what you want to be doing with this guy, right? Just great value-y creatures, preferably with sack abilities. You could do ETBs as well. Yeah, because if you had like a Ravenous Chupacabra, it dies and you're going to exile it, then create a token that's a copy of it. It's going to enter the battlefield and you get to destroy a creature. Again, it's not going to be a creature itself, but you're still going to get the ETB, just like any enchantment that when it ETBs gives you something. The ability is still there. So you're just it's just a 4-mana enchantment that when it enters the battlefield, you get to destroy a creature. Yeah, so I think I like it. Very value-y. I love commanders like that, and that is like, can you build around the enchantment thing? You could. There is a little bit of tribal theme that you could do in this deck, I think. You know, you could put like a Sterling Grove in here to give all your enchantments Shroud. So all those creatures that come back into play will now have Shroud or something. So you could play around the enchantment thing as well. But I think I really like the idea of, I just have those super value-y creatures. You could also go the route of, I have an Elish Norn, and you know, Elish Norn is going to be a target. It's going to die. And when it dies, it comes back into play as an enchantment, giving all your creatures +2/+2 and all your opponent's creatures -2/-2. And now it's really hard to get off the table, right? Enchantments are one of the hardest permanents to get off the table. Black, red, and blue don't get rid of enchantments really at all. And so turning your stuff into enchantments just so that it keeps your opponents from getting rid of them is a good idea. So if you had like an Elish Norn, it dies, then comes back as an enchantment. Now your opponents are going to have a heck of a time getting off the table, I think. So that's also another way you could go here. Very interesting. Next up, we got Mazzy, True Sword Paladin. 1 red, green, white, halfling knight, 3/4. Whenever an enchanted creature attacks one of your opponents, it gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. Okay, so already we know we're going with this deck, right? We're going to be doing auras in Naya colors. Whenever an aura you control is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, exile it until end of your next turn. You may till the end of the next turn you may cast that card. Okay, well that's great. That's getting around the loss of value that you'd get with auras. A reason why I don't like auras typically. I'm a value guy. I love value, like I just said, and auras are sort of the opposite of that, where you put it on a creature and then all your opponent has to do is kill the creature and you're out 2 cards or maybe more, right? That's why I've always been not the hugest fan of auras, and this is getting around that, right? Whenever an aura you control is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, exile it until the end of your next turn. So if your opponent board wipes all your auras, or you control, yeah, so you have, say, 3 creatures with 3 auras, they each have an aura on them. Your opponent board wipes, all the auras go to the graveyard, and then they all get exiled, and then on your next turn you can now cast them all again. That's really good. Wow. And then Totem Armor. Now man, how good is Totem Armor in this deck? You put Totem Armor on all your creatures, someone board wipes, all your creatures get regenerated. Well, I mean, they don't actually get regenerated, but they don't get destroyed. Your Totem Armor does get destroyed. It goes to the graveyard. Then you exile it and do it again. Man, it can get really, really difficult for your opponents to get your stuff off the table. Yeah, this is definitely getting around the downsides of auras and how they're a loss of value. This is a really interesting one for sure. I think it's going to be a popular one. And lastly today, Baba Lysaga, Night Witch. 1 black, green, human warlock, 3/3. Tap, sacrifice up to 3 permanents. Okay, so we're already in a sacrifice theme. If there were 3 or more card types among the sacrificed permanents, each opponent loses 3 life, you gain 3 life, and you draw 3 cards. Wow. Okay, so obviously you want the 3. I mean, if you don't have the 3 card types, you're just sacrificing 3 permanents for nothing. You're getting 0, right? So I guess if there's some reason why you want to be sacrificing your stuff, I don't know if there is, but you could do that. They don't have to share a permanent type, but you really want to be sharing the permanent type. I mean, gaining 3 life, your opponents lose 3 life, and then you draw 3 cards. That's big. But you need the 3. I mean, obviously you can sacrifice your own lands, right? So you're always going to have lands in play. And it's going to be, so if you're missing that card type, say you have a creature and an artifact, but you're missing that 3rd card type, you can always just sacrifice your lands, right? This is hardcore sacrifice tribal. You can't just do a lands deck with this, right? Because you're going to, although Gitrog would be a great fit here, because again, you can always just throw a land into the mix to throw that other card type in there, and then you're going to get to draw off your Gitrog, so that'll be a great fit. You're really going to have to do some deep research here, though, to find maybe enchantments that you want to sacrifice, artifacts that you want to sacrifice. Like you could throw that Ichor Wellspring in here. You know, there's lots of artifacts that want to be sacrificed. You're going to have to find stuff that want to be sacrificed, but in different card types, right? Obviously, the creature one's going to be easy here. Like I said, you can always sacrifice your lands. I don't know if you're going to be wanting to do that all the time. Like every turn. I don't think you need to activate this ability every turn, though. Drawing 3 cards every turn, I don't know if it's necessary. You're always going to have the land available, and creatures are going to be super easy as well. You're always going to have creatures that, again, like the Ravenous Chupacabra comes down, destroys an opponent's creature, and then you can sacrifice it because it's just sitting there doing nothing, right? So that's going to be easy. You're going to need that 3rd card type, though, which is going to be probably in artifacts or enchantments. And so you're going to want to, again, there's lots of artifacts out there that you want to be sacrificing. That's going to be an easy one. Enchantments, maybe not so much. So I don't know. The enchantments one, that might be a little difficult. I think you probably would want to go with artifact. So artifact, creature, and land are the 3 card types you're probably going to be using more than anything. Like I said, I don't know if you have to do this ability every turn to make it worth it. It would be tough to do it every turn. Cranking out tokens would be great, an Awakening Zone or something like that, just to ensure you have that sack fodder for every single turn. So anything that's cranking out tokens would be fantastic here. You know, treasure tokens, again, there's an artifact, right? So if you have something that is cranking out treasure tokens all the time in Golgari colors, I don't know, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But stuff like that. So doing creature and artifact tokens, again, would be really, really handy here so that you can be sacrificing those. Multiple card types would be good too, right? So if you have something that is an enchantment artifact or a creature enchantment or something like that, multiple card types would be great because then you can fulfill the 3 card types thing as much as you possibly can, right? So wow, that's an interesting one for sure. Definitely. It's hard to tell. Like I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, is this going to be popular? Because sacrificing 3 permanents, that's not easy. That's a bit of a hit, but the payoff is big, big, big payoff. This might be a real popular one, I think. But that is it. That is all for today. 5 really interesting commanders. You know, I'm sort of picking out the ones because they are just dumping so many legendary creatures right out of the gate with this. And I'm sort of picking the ones that I think are going to be interesting to build around and interesting, you know, to talk about as well. Buzzworthy for sure. But what do you guys think of these new commanders? Let me know in the comments below. But that is it for today. And thanks for tuning in.